Now, to work out who the sisters are and where they came from, we have to go a fair way back, though not obviously to the Horus Heresy. In fact, the origins of the sisters lie in the 36th millennium, when, suffice it to say, the Imperium is not having a good time. Things are going badly. There's warp storms everywhere, orcs are rampaging across the galaxy as, well, orcs tend to do, and things are just generally not looking good. In fact, it's probably the most danger the Imperium's been in since Horus decided to have his little tantrum over not getting a statue. Now into this insane world steps Goge Vandire. Again, Warhammer names are hard, some people call him Gogi, or Goje I guess, but I'm going to call him Goge. It's G-O-G-E if you look it up. So he is the 361st Master of the Administratum, basically the top bureaucrat, the top pen pusher in the whole of the Imperium. And he is on his way to become a High Lord of Terror, one of the governing council of the entire Imperium. And a little bit like some people in the real world, Stalin is the guy I'm thinking of here, he who controls the bureaucracy in some ways controls the entire thing. So he is in a very, very powerful position. Because he becomes Master of the Administratum, Goge uses his power to put in place a puppet as the Ecclesiarch, who is essentially the Space Pope, the head of the Imperial Church and the Master of the Imperial Creed, a man called Paulus III. Now, Paulus III doesn't really last very long because he's incompetent and he's venal. And, of course, Goge knew this, which is why he put him there. So Goge gets a military coup going, using his power within the Administratum to knock Paulus III out of office. And, well, guess who gets to be the new Ecclesiarch? Oh, it's Goge Vandire, because he has a group of cardinals within the church that support him. So now you have a man who is head of both the Administratum and Ecclesiarch. Short of the Emperor, he's basically the most powerful person in the Imperium. Now, again, as mentioned earlier, the Imperium at this time is not having a great time at all. It's constantly at war, the Chaos Marines are knocking about again, the orcs are rampaging all over the place. So Goge being in a position of such power might be a good thing if he's a good guy. Yeah, spoiler, he's not a good guy. He's basically nuts. And he starts something called the Reign of Blood, which is as bad, realistically, as the Horus Heresy, or almost as bad, for the Imperium. This is a time when Goge Vandire starts just persecuting everybody across the galaxy that he doesn't like. We're talking mass burnings, everybody being declared heretics, whole Space Marine chapters having war declared on them. The other thing to know about this time is, and this is going to be important for later, is that the Ecclesiarchy at this time also maintains a massive army. So as well as the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Army, the Imperial Guard, we have the Frateris Templar. The Frateris Templar are essentially the standing military forces of the church. So sort of think Spanish Inquisition, come Knights Templars, come religious nutcases, basically a lot of medieval history in our real world. They've basically got guns and all the nightmarish weaponry of the future. So if they decide they want to get rid of you, well, frankly, they can do it. Even Space Marine chapters are condemned during the Reign of Blood. I mean, this is how bad Goge Vandire gets. Into this step the Daughters of the Emperor. The Daughters of the Emperor were a sisterhood of warrior women, nuns if you will, living on an agri-world called San'Lior, and they had chosen to isolate themselves and dedicate themselves to their faith in the God Emperor. Now, Goge Vandire heard about this and decided that this would be something he'd be quite interested in. So he turns up on this planet with a huge retinue of followers in all of his glory and basically marches into town and says, "Obey me, I'm in charge, I am the voice of the Emperor, you need to do as I say." And put it this way, the reaction from the Daughters of the Emperor is not great. They essentially turn around and go, "Who the hell are you? What are you doing here? And why have you brought these thousands of people to our nice farm planet and our nice nunnery that we're all living in?" So they demand that he prove his power and his role as the voice of the Emperor. Now, Vandire does this quite simply by ordering one of his lieutenants to shoot him with, I think it was a plasma pistol. Either way, they take a pot shot at him. Now, bear in mind, the Daughters of the Emperor, despite being supremely skilled warrior nuns, don't really have much technology. They're living on a farm planet in what is essentially a galactic backwater. So what they don't know about is that old Mr. Vandire is wearing a Rosarius. He has, in game terms, an invulnerable save. He gets shot at by someone with a pistol and flash of light, nothing happens as his personal shield flickers into life. The Daughters of the Emperor take this to be the symbol of the Emperor's favour, and that this man, this Goge Vandire, truly is the voice of the God Emperor and is blessed by him. and so they pledge themselves to his service. Goj Vandire takes the daughters of the Emperor and immediately changes their name to the Brides of the Emperor, and then brings them on as his personal bodyguard, occupying the ecclesiarchal palace on Terra itself. Anyway, time goes on and the reign of blood gets worse and worse and worse, and as you can imagine, other people in the Imperium, Space Marine chapters included, decide they've had a bit of enough of this. Into this world steps a man called Sebastian Thor, a reformer within the ecclesiarchy who sets up something called the Confederation of Light, who essentially believe that yes, the Emperor is a god and yes, there should be a religion, but basically that Goj Vandire is a complete nutcase and he needs to be got rid of fairly quickly. Sebastian Thor manages to get together with a bunch of Space Marine chapters and various forces that agree with him and launches something called the Terran Crusade. This essentially is, as the name suggests, a massive war campaign to get to Terra, and they have to fight their way there. I mean, this is a civil war, again, on the scale similar to the Horus Heresy, which, by the 36th millennium, by the time this has happened, has moved somewhat into the realm of myth, as the Imperium is wont to do with these sort of things. The Terran Crusade fights its way to Terra, and while this is happening, the head of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Fabricator General, Gastaf Hediatrix, decides that it's time to get rid of Goj Vandire because, again, he's completely nuts and he's destroying the Imperium. And he tries to oust him by forming a coup in the Senatorum Imperialis, effectively the parliament of the Imperium. This doesn't go that well. Goj Vandire responds to this in an entirely reasonable and rational way by declaring both the Adeptus Mechanicus and the entirety of the Adeptus Astartes as heretics and traitors to the Imperium. Yeah, good move, buddy. So, as you can imagine, this boosts the power of the Confederation of Light and the Terran Crusade, and the Mechanicus and most of the Adeptus Astartes chapters that are available at the time, that are fighting other forces, join in and head for Terra. There's this huge series of battles, and eventually, much with the Horus Heresy, but this time with the good guys besieging Terra, the Confederation of Light arrives and attacks the Ecclesiarchal Palace. Now this is where it gets fun if you're a Sisters of Battle fan. Vandire declaring the Astartes heretics doesn't go down well, and chapters including the Imperial Fists, the Black Templars, the Soul Drinkers and the Firehawks, as well as the forces of the Ecclesiarchy, the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, who are with the Confederation of Light, fight their way to Terra and lay siege to the Ecclesiarchal Palace. The Space Marines, thinking, well, this should be fairly simple. I mean, this is the Ecclesiarchy, they have a big army, but they're just people, they're just Fraterris Templar, decide to do a drop pod assault directly onto the Ecclesiarchal Palace. Except the problem is when they get there, they're not just facing the Fraterris Templar. They find a bunch of power-armoured, Walter-wielding warrior women. Yes, it's the Brides of the Emperor. And to be quite blunt, the Brides of the Emperor kick their ass. The Space Marines just weren't prepared, and even the power of the mighty Astartes can't overcome the just sheer religious zeal and faith that these warrior women have. The assault becomes bogged down, continually being pushed back every time they try and attack the inner precincts of the Ecclesiarchal Palace to get to Vandire himself. These warrior women continually defending it with all their faith and all their zeal, in a way that is frankly shocking to most of the Space Marines. Realising that the assault is becoming bogged down, a single custodes, a man called Longinus of the Companions of the Emperor, goes and meets with one of the senior brides of the Emperor, Alicia Dominica. Now she's going to become important as one of the founding members of the Sisters of Battle, and Longinus takes her and her 5 closest bodyguard, Arabella, Catherine, Lucia, Mina and Sylvana, to the Emperor's chamber itself in the deepest part of the Imperial Palace, standing them before the Golden Throne. As with many of these things, no one knows what was said between the Emperor and these 6 warrior women, but whatever it was, he pretty much told them, and to be fair, you would listen if you were in this situation, that Goj Vandire is not in fact the voice of the Emperor. He's a dick, and you should get rid of him. Longinus leads them back into the Ecclesiarchal Palace, and suffice to say, Vandire thinks, great, my bodyguard are back. Yeah, doesn't go well for him. Alicia Dominica and her bodyguard confronted Vandire in his personal chambers, and the words she said to him have been recorded, cast onto her own black marble sarcophagus. You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your own decrees have stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and now it is time for you to die. With these words, Dominica drew her power sword and brought it down upon Vandire, slicing his head clean off. Amusingly enough, Vandire's last words supposedly are, "I don't have time to die, I'm too busy," which I quite like actually, but rather speaks to the insanity of the man. And with that, the reign of blood is over. Vandire is dead. Sebastian Thor becomes the next ecclesiarch and sets about dramatically reforming the way the ecclesiarchy works. One of the big changes, which, if you know the hobby, you'll know about, is that the Frateris Templar, the standing military of the ecclesiarchy, are gone. No longer will they be allowed to maintain huge armies and fleets of their own. In fact, the rule that is applied to the ecclesiarchy is quite simple, that it shall have no men under arms. The brides of the Emperor, however, given their role in eventually destroying Vandire and bringing an end to his insanity, are allowed to continue existing, and are actually allowed to stay as part of the ecclesiarchy's armed wing, renamed the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. They don't breach, after all, the rule that there can be no men under arms. At the convocation of Nephilim around the same time, the Ordo Hereticus arm of the Inquisition is created, designed to ensure that no such thing as the Age of Apostasy can ever happen to the Imperium again. And it is at this that the Adepta Sororitas is engaged as the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus, prosecuting their actions across the Imperium where necessary. It is important to remember, though, that the Adepta Sororitas are not merely a military organisation. Even from their very beginning, although they have their orders militant and their role as the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus, they also include other arms. The Orders Hospitaller, that apply medical attention to people across the Imperium and lead medical research. The Orders Famulus, who act as diplomats and liaisons between Imperial worlds and the ruling families of the High Imperium. Essentially, they're a very big and very multifaceted organisation, although what we see on the tabletop is mostly, obviously, the Sisters of Battle, the armed wing, the Orders Militant. The Orders Militant themselves are actually founded over the next few millennia. Alicia Dominica and her sisters initially lead the Sisters of Battle across the galaxy in the period after the Age of Apostasy and the Reign of Blood, prosecuting heretics and removing any last taints of Goj Vandire's existence and his legacy. Dominica is eventually killed by a single traitor with a lasgun. Pretty ignominious ending for such a hero of the Imperium, but she is canonised as an Imperial saint. Her bodyguard, Mina, Sylvana, Catherine, go on to lead the Sisters of Battle in many victories, and eventually Orders Militant are founded in their names. The Order of the Bloody Rose, our Martyred Lady, and the original order, the Order of the Ebon Chalice. The Orders Militant are organised as a single large organisation, unlike the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, under the command of the Abbess Sanctorum, the overall head of the organisation. Fundamentally, it's split between two convents, the Convent Sanctorum and the Convent Prioris, under which sit the Orders Militant and the various other orders and branches of the Adepta Sororitas. The Orders Militant include the 6 Orders Majoris we see used in the Codex today: the Order of the Bloody Rose, the Order of our Martyred Lady, the Order of the Valorous Heart, the Sacred Rose, the Ebon Chalice, and the Argent Shroud. The Adepta Sororitas are essentially brought in by the Imperium whenever there is something that the Guard, the PDF, the local human forces can't quite handle, and is probably on the same level as would require the deployment of a much rarer Space Marine chapter. I mean, one thing to remember about the Adepta Sororitas is it's actually a huge organisation spanning the entire Imperium, with the ability to deploy its forces anywhere at any time if needed. But another thing to remember is these guys are not just your local guardsmen. They're not brought in for any old situation. They are brought in when things are bad. We're talking demonic incursions, massive orc wars, Xenos threats that the Imperium otherwise can't handle. That is where the Sisters of Battle go. The Sisters are the elite of the Imperium's non-genetically enhanced forces, given the finest power armour and the best weapons, and trained to a peak of human physical fitness beyond anything else seen across the Imperium, even among the Tempestus Scions of the Astra Militarum. These guys are the best of the best. And what helps them alongside their sheer eliteness and amazing war gear is their faith in the Emperor. Let faith be their shield. This faith and belief in the God Emperor is what allows the Sisters to perform literal miracles on the battlefield, able to stand up against the most powerful of enemies and the most powerful of weapons in their own power armour and with their own vehicles, even in situations where they should otherwise be easily destroyed. They are able to turn the tide of the battle through this faith, and it's this which marks them out as unique among the armies of the Imperium, and just adds to the power of their legend. This power of faith can even allow individual battle sisters to transcend mortality and become beings known as living saints. The most famous example of a living saint is probably Celestine, a battle sister of the Order of Our Martyred Lady, who was felled during a war against heretics known as the Palatine Schism. During a battle, Celestine was seemingly killed on the battlefield, and yet when her body was taken back by her battle sisters and the blood and gore of the battlefield was cleansed from her, she rose again to life and was hailed as a figurehead for the entire crusade. Using this power, she directed the crusade's leader, a man called Lord Ansgar, to go to a world called Sanctus Lys, an otherwise remarkable backwater. On this world, Celestine led the crusade to the Shrine of the Fiery Heart, the former name for the Order of Our Martyred Lady, which had been visited by the Order's founder, St. Catherine, who was one of Alicia Dominica's companions back in the days of Goge Vandire. Celestine descended into a tomb that had otherwise been covered up and which no one in the Imperium seemed to know about, and when she ascended from the tomb, she wore the armour of St. Catherine itself, having a pair of great wings and a sword so bright that none could look upon it, that blazed with the holy fire of her faith in the Emperor. After this apotheosis, Celestine was hailed as a living saint, and she fought through the rest of the Palatine Schism. Since that day, she has appeared on numerous battlefields all over the galaxy, long after the normal lifetime of a battle sister has passed, seemingly appearing at the most dire moments to help her sisters in battle against heretics, chaos, and whoever they may be fighting. She has been felled multiple times by multiple creatures on multiple battlefields, and has risen yet again to lead her sisters in battle. Celestine also plays a vital part in the story of Warhammer 40K in the Dark Millennium, as it was her whose dreams convinced Belisarius Cawl and some Black Templars to head down to the planet of Clysus and ultimately through a webway gate to Ultramar, which led to the resurrection of Rabute Guilliman and the start of the Indomitus Crusade. So this again shows how vital the sisters are in moving the story forward in the 40k universe. At Cadia, Celestine also goes toe-to-toe with Abaddon himself, holding him off for long enough to let the Imperial forces evacuate, and partly, arguably, forcing his hand into destroying the planet altogether. No one knows where Celestine will appear next. However, wherever she does appear, it is clear that she, along with her two Gemini Superior who accompany her, are the Emperor's will made manifest. In the current Dark Millennium, the sisters fight across multiple battlefronts, having taken part in the Indomitus Crusade led by Rabute Guilliman. It's here that characters like Junith Erutia first appear, who has been elevated to the leadership of Canoness of the Order of Our Martyred Lady, and is the cool model you can see flying about in a pulpit. The sisters fight on multiple worlds all across the galaxy, prosecuting faith against the heretic and those who would seek to tear down the Imperium. Alongside the Space Marines, they prosecute their wars of faith and help defend the Imperium from those who wish to tear it down. And that's why they are such an important part of the Imperium and the Warhammer 40k universe to this day. So I hope you enjoyed that potted history of the Sisters of Battle. They're a really cool faction with lots of amazing lore and really interesting bits of mechanics that you can use when you play on the tabletop. If that's something you'd like to see me make a video on, then I'd be happy to do so. Just let me know in the comments down below. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this potted history of the Sisters of Battle. Until next time, I've been ADRWargaming. See you soon.